Once again, we are reacting to a Courtney Ryan video. This time, it is first date tier list from a woman's perspective. I don't know if there's one out there from a male's perspective. Probably. We're going to have to search for that. But we got a woman's perspective.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Courtney Ryan, and today we're doing something a little bit different. You guys have really enjoyed my little tier list that I've made in the past, so I thought today we would do a tier list ranking of first date ideas from specifically a woman's perspective here. So I know there's a lot of mixed information online about dates, about first dates, so I wanted to give you guys a woman's perspective on different first date ideas, some common ones that I typically see online, some more controversial ones.
Now, where I'm interested to really get a woman's perspective is on movie dates. Going to the movie theater, watching a movie together. Because although it's pretty clearly a bad idea, as you're kind of just stuck for hours sitting next to each other, and you can't talk. Like if you're in a movie theater, you can't talk to each other. So, unless you're just a massive jerk. But that makes it like impossible to get to know each other. But even though I understand that, and everyone kind of agrees and understands why that is, I still have found that first dates to movies have led to like relationships. It's weirdly not like an absolute failure. It's a failure as far as like actually getting to know each other and getting much to go off of as a reason to go on a second date, but it does lead to second dates fairly often. So I'm interested to see what women have to say about that,
and just rank them on this tier list and see what we think. So let's get into it. Okay, for the first one here, we are starting out with a controversial one, which is coffee. And honestly, I love a coffee date. I've seen a lot of women get online and absolutely detest a coffee date and say things like it's low effort or shows that a man just sees you as a friend. And I don't necessarily know that I would agree with all of those things. I think if you both really like coffee and tea, this could be a great first date that allows you to have a lovely conversation.
I don't really like tea. I like me some iced tea. And I'm not talking about the wrapper, but I don't like coffee at all. But a coffee shop is a good date. Luckily, like every coffee shop has food, has a big variety of drinks. I like frozen coffee drinks, like an iced cappuccino, delicious. I like the flavor of coffee, but not the like dirty, taste like dirt aspect to actual coffee. But like the flavor, the actual like non-dirt flavor in coffee, I like the smell, I like the taste. But I would say yes, a coffee date is low effort, but in that being true, it presents a challenge as both people have to kind of like put their best foot forward. The coffee is kind of completely inconsequential. It's just a thing that's there. It's just a setting for two people to be sitting together on a date and getting to know each other. So, as someone like me, I like it because I like to talk to people. I like to get to know them. I like to hear their stories, tell stories of my own. So I thrive in that environment, because I get to utilize my best skill in dating, which is talking, socializing. So I feel like these women complaining about it, they are just annoyed that they've gone on dates with men where it didn't go well, and they didn't at least get a meal or something out of it. Because I'm going to be honest, a lot of the dates that I've went on, a lot of women wouldn't be able to hang on a coffee date. Like they just they wouldn't have it. They just don't have like the social skills, the conversation skills to be able to hold multiple conversations in a row. And I'm sure that's the same for men. I'm sure there's tons of men out there who can't hold a conversation. In fact, I know there's a ton of men because I encounter men. I don't date them, but in all other avenues of life, I encounter them, and a lot of them are pretty dull.
Conversation without worrying about having food stuck in your teeth, which I can appreciate. I think it's cute and casual and doesn't involve any sort of time constraint. This could allow you to sit there and talk for hours as long as you wish, or if you guys are not really hitting it off, you can go your separate ways and not be tied to a very fancy 4-course meal. So again, before we get too far into the video, I do want to reiterate, I am just one woman, so what I think might not be the same as every woman that you see online or every woman in the world, but I just wanted to offer a woman's perspective on some of these things and maybe help you see it from different points of view. I only ever went on a coffee date for a first date when I was in college, and I felt like that was a pretty appropriate first date for the period of life that I was in. There are definitely pros and cons to this one. I do see where women are coming from when they say that it could come across low effort. However, like I said, I think it can also be a great date that leads to wonderful conversation and be very casual and no pressure for both people involved. So I am not going to put it in S tier simply because I know there are a ton of women who don't agree with me, and because this type of date will really require heavier lifting.
Yeah, exactly. For that exact reason, I couldn't place it in S tier either, because there's too much skill involved for it to go well. And like I've said this in other videos, that on a first date, doing a little bit of something, being around other people, having the tiny little opportunities to people watch can allow for so much like funny things to happen, interesting things, talking points to like come up, because I don't know, there's just things happening in proximity to you. You don't want like a date that's overly busy, but you don't want one where there's literally nothing or something that's very dull. And I find that in like a coffee shop, there's never really going to be anything of note happening. There's just going to be people who go in, stand in line, and leave. And either they're mildly frustrated because they need their caffeine fix, or they're just like having a pleasant time. It's just no conversation starters there. Nothing kind of assisting you.
On the conversation skills and ability to keep a conversation flowing, which might not be the best option for all of you. So I'm going to put the coffee date in A tier. Again, this is my perspective. If you don't agree, that's fine. It's not your tier list. So I'm putting it in A.
I mean, I would say that's also good. Like, I would probably put it in B tier, because not only is there a skill issue, there's like a clear skill check, a bar that you need to be able to surpass as you're carrying the date yourself. You're doing the heavy lifting, but also that can backfire in a lot of ways. If you have, people have so much like disqualifiers that are kind of in separate tiers themselves, and there's sort of like small ones that aren't like hard line deal breakers that someone's going to be able to overlook if they actually like are attracted to you, interested in you, if things are going well. They're going to be able to look past those, but sometimes those are going to pop up naturally in a situation like a coffee shop date where you're stuck talking to each other specifically. And if you're not good at avoiding those kinds of topics that are likely going to bring up deal breakers, like strong stuff to do about like your religious beliefs, your political beliefs, things like that.
Because I think there are some things that are better, but I think it's a great option for a lot of people.
I have 12 emails, 30 messages, and
Grammarly, come on, man.
Okay, the next one here is another
Typing in a
controversial
pool.
one, which is a walk. A walk by itself with nothing else included isn't necessarily the greatest date, in my opinion. A picnic with a walk? Very cute. Again, this is one that women tend to have incredibly strong opinions on, and I can understand why. You know, if a woman likes to get dressed up on a first date, for example, and wear a cute outfit, maybe a walk on a super hot day is not the greatest option. Some women, again, also think this comes across low effort. I'm sure some women think that simply because it is free. I think there are many free things you can do that are not low effort. However, just a walk by itself, I wouldn't recommend. I don't think that necessarily comes across the greatest, and I think that there are much better options. You know, I think
The problem with walks are that they don't lend themselves to like getting comfortable and the like natural progression of a date, as you will be like stopping on a bench or somewhere to get comfortable, but you're not gonna like be there for very long or long enough to like actually get comfortable. Like, it's usually some metal bench you're sitting on. It's just not great for like, it's not meant for like long term being there. And often you're like walking in a particularly nice area, and it's kind of hard for that to lend itself to moving to another location, if that makes sense. Now, where I live, there's like two beautiful waterfronts. There's a lake and there's a river. And at the river, there's a bridge, there's food vendors, there's like a park. There's some really cool stuff. And you can get like a view of the lake. The lake leads into this river. It's one of the Great Lakes, obviously. I live in Canada. And the lake itself, there's like a really big park on the lake here where there's all kinds of different areas to it, including a beach. This park is awesome for walking, but if the person's not like down to go to the beach, it can make it kind of like, it puts you in this weird zone of not being sure what you want to do at the park. Like, there's things to do, but it's hard to really decide, if that makes sense. It's hard to like it because it has things to do, it almost gives you too many options, and none of the options sound like all that great unless you want to go swimming at the beach or hang out at the beach, at which point it's like a beach date. It's like a totally separate thing. But yeah, I've gone on dates that have gone really well where we're walking in this park that has a beach, but it's more so that it led to a beach date, and it kind of like became the second location, even though it was mostly a walking date.
I think walking around somewhere like a farmer's market and grabbing a coffee or brunch would be super cute. That I would probably give S tier. But just a walk, I'm going to go probably low B tier, C tier. And actually, I'm going to put a walk alone by itself in C tier. But
if you walk, like, I've never gone on a walking date where there wasn't a destination, like some kind of agenda, right? Like I said, one of the best dates I went on, we walked around this park and then we went to the beach and went swimming. Now, another date, a date I went on recently that also went really well, we went and got ice cream and then we walked and talked, and it was really cool.
if you combine that walk with something else, then it can really move up in the ranks, in my opinion. So maybe that's what you take away from this video. One thing on its own, not the greatest, but when you combine it with something else, fabulous. All right, next up we have the movie theater. I'm gonna just go ahead and say I'm giving it a big fat F for this one for a few reasons. The point of a first date is to get to know someone and see if you would like to go out with them again, which you cannot do at the movies. You have to be quiet, which obviously isn't conducive to getting to know someone at all. And while we're here, I've gotta say, if you are someone who talks during movies, straight to jail. You annoy me. You shouldn't be able to get to know someone at the movies because you shouldn't be talking. You should be quiet, watching the movie.
Absolutely. I would definitely place a movie date in F tier. But like I said, it seems to go well. Like, it's awkward. Makes no sense to go on a first date to a movie. But it's not like a guaranteed disaster. I think both people probably always see it as like a wash, where it's like, all right, I went on a date and like had a good time, but we didn't really get to know each other. And then you get to know each other on a second date. But then you kind of don't really. You're kind of just missing out and wasting time, unless it's a movie that you both really want to see. And the problem with movies is that they air late, so it's like nighttime, and when you get like late into the nighttime, when you're like approaching midnight, there kind of starts to be more pressure on moving to the next activity, moving to the next location, as there's kind of implications are there of like spending the night or doing this or that. So it just adds a little bit of pressure to the situation that isn't necessarily great. Now, if, like I said, if you both are really into a movie and you're going to talk about it, if you're going to like chill in the car afterwards and talk about your views on the movie and you're going to have this great conversation, it could actually go really, really well. And I think that this is nowhere near the disaster, just like with the coffee date, where you have the ability to show the deal breakers that you have to the other person. The opposite is true of the movie date, because you just aren't getting to know each other at all.
Movie and enjoying the film. So again, putting this one in F tier. I think this is one of the worst first dates of all time, but I kind of want to approach this list as this is the first time that you're meeting this person, just to make things a little bit easier. So I would not recommend going to the movies for a first date. You'll both probably be feeling a little bit anxious since it's the first date, and then you have to sit there in silence next to this person for 2 hours. No, thank you. Now, doing something with a movie could be a little bit better, but I still probably wouldn't recommend it. I think there's better options. I would save the movie for a third, fourth date, or farther in if you make it there. Next up is a formal meal. I split this one into a formal meal, and then the next one will be informal meal, just because I think these can be very different and create an incredibly different atmosphere and just kind of vibe on the date. So first one here is a formal date. You know, a formal fancy meal can seem like a good idea, and for some people, I'm sure that it's totally fine. But I think there are a few reasons why this is not the best option. Again, keep in mind for this one, I'm talking about something that's more formal and more fancy, something that you need to get dressed up for, something that's going to be very expensive. I think for a lot of people, this can be kind of unsustainable and create a sort of sense of false expectations or unrealistic expectations. I think it creates more pressure. You're locked into a lengthy meal. It's more expensive. I think this one is something that would be better to save for date 2 or date 3 or further in, once you've sort of established a connection with someone and you know that you're both into each other and you would like to see each other again. And I think
it puts pressure on the person it puts pressure on both the man and the woman. Like, I'm somebody who can afford to take a woman out on a fancy date. I don't like to do it early on because, like I said, there's implications with dating. And usually what happens is the woman feels a little bit uncomfortable. She sees the price of the food and she's like, oh God. Even though she's almost like certain that she's not going to pay for it, any part of it, she still like feels bad. She still feels like, oh my God, I don't want to have this person spend all this money on me. And that just creates a situation where they're going to just order something that they don't actually want. They're going to order something that's like the cheapest. And it isn't inducive to a very like smooth quality date that you're going to get from going to a cheaper place. So yeah, I would advise people never do this. Never go fancy restaurant on the first date. Terrible idea. Because you can just go somewhere cheaper and that pressure doesn't exist at all. Right? For both people, for both the man and the woman. especially the woman, right? Because then she doesn't have to worry about the guy dropping all this money. And even if like even if it doesn't go well and she feels really bad and wants to like at least pay for her meal or something, then she has that option at a cheaper place, where she might not actually have that option really at a more expensive place. Just overall cheaper. Go for a mid-tier place. There's so much great restaurants like everywhere that aren't expensive.
If a girl makes it seem like you need to take her to a 5-star restaurant or somewhere very fancy, or she won't be into you, then I don't know if I'd recommend going out with her, just to be honest. So I'm going to put a formal, fancy-ish meal in B tier. For some people, I think this could be totally fine and end up being wonderful. But I think for a lot of people, this is something that is out of their budget and also a little out of touch to expect this on a first date. Would it be great to go to a nice restaurant on a first date? Yes, but I don't think it should be something that's expected. And I also think, again, it's not realistic for a lot of people. I think if you take a woman to this very fancy date on a first date and you spend a ton of money, then what is she going to expect after this date? You know, if it's not something that you can keep up with necessarily or doesn't fit in with your lifestyle or your budget, it's not a great precedent to set, in my personal opinion. So I just wouldn't even go there again on a first date. I think it can be a wonderful second, third, fourth, further in date. But for the first date, I would not. Honestly, I'm teetering between B and C. I'm going to put it in B for now. Nothing is set in stone where it's at right now. I do have the ability as the tier list controller to move things around where I see fit. But right now I'm going to put it in B. Not the worst, definitely things that are better. So it's going to go in B. Solid date.
Yeah, that's fair. I would put it in like C or D tier. And you'll have to see in part 2 what my other opinions are. So far, I'm mostly in agreement. I would rate some of these lower than she would. But yeah, let's keep hammering on. Check out part 2.